Hello, you're listening to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, presented by Brandon Elliott. This show will be going over all aspects of real estate investing and is intended to educate, motivate, and prepare you to take action on your first or next real estate investment. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Brandon Elliott. I'm excited today. We got a special guest up in the LA area, so the West Coast love, an author already of Fire Yourself, which has been Amazon #1 bestseller in the past, has another book coming out in the future that I'm really stoked for called Rich Brain. He's interviewed over 2,500 millionaires nationwide and all over the world, I'm sure, to be able to really understand, what makes the mind and the successful individual entrepreneur really tick and be able to kind of unfold for the average listener out there. So it's going to be incredible. But this man is a syndicator, has raised over 40 million in the past, putting it to work, and really specializes in not just real estate, but alternative type of investments. So really excited because we're in one of those seasons right now that real estate's always been amazing, but it's also like one of those weird situations that we're in right now. And so it's good to start looking and diversifying your portfolio and to see what else is out there. And there's some incredible other assets that you can be a part of with low risk, high rewards, and be able to put your money to work. So Bronson Hill, what's up, man? How we doing today, bro?
I'm good, man. I just love seeing you on your treadmill desk, just like, getting it done over there. Just like, you're just going to start running here in a little bit and not even breaking a sweat, man. I love it. So
We'll see about it. I appreciate you, man, for jumping on and taking time out of your day to pour into myself, the listeners, and overall anybody out there that doesn't know who you are, where you're from, what you've been through and so forth. Do you mind just giving that 30,000 foot view for listeners?
Sure, absolutely. So I was a well-paid medical sales professional, and I was making really good money. I was making like $200K a year. But the thing that in my life that was missing is I didn't have control over my time. And so a lot of people that I know talk about financial freedom, but really to me, and I think for a lot of people, what it means is time freedom, being able to do what you want to do, knowing your expenses are covered. You can travel, you can do the things you want to do, you can write a book, whatever. And so I started to learn about real estate. I had a single family property just for years as a landlord in another state, started buying more single family homes because that's what I knew. And then I had a mentor come, I was just saying when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So they said, why are you doing this single family? Why don't you do multifamily? And I said, like apartment buildings? Like, well, I don't have the money. And he said, well, you can raise the money. So I learned about this thing called syndication, and I learned about other people's money, how you can raise money to do deals. And it actually solves the problem for them because a lot of these people are very busy and they don't have time to go do deals themselves. And so that led me on a path, started a meetup, raised some money from an investor, found a partner, and now 5 years later, raised over $40 million. We've done 2,000 multifamily units. We've done ATMs, car washes, oil and gas, development, some VC stuff in the energy space. And we're just looking at stuff that really provides those three things, right? Cash flow, appreciation, or tax benefits.
I love it. Yeah, I think tax benefits too for, the doctor out there or just high income earner. It's not always just about putting the money to work very hard, right? Like everybody wants to do that. But once you start seeing how much the IRS, the government is taking from you each and every year, you're like, oh, shoot, how do I actually just save my damn money from being robbed?
Yeah.
And so it's a great opportunity for investors to put their money to work safely, but also to save on taxes as well.
Yeah. No, so chapter 8 of Fire Yourself, I have a whole chapter dedicated to, it's called, reduce your taxes potentially to zero. And I talk about how I got myself from paying a 25% taxable rate to about a 1% tax rate. So there's amazing ways I love talking about tax strategy.
Yeah. So talk to me about the book first off, Fire Yourself. When did that come out? How did that start manifesting? And what was the time frame that you started working on it?
So I was actually at a Tony Robbins event. I don't know if you've been to Tony Robbins, Brandon, but he says this quote, and he says, it's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. So it sounds really simple, but you really think that's very profound. When you actually decide to do something, for me, when I decided to quit my job in 3 years, it created that as a possibility for me. And I was able to do it in less than 3 years because I decided and I committed to, I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I committed to do it. So actually at the Tony Robbins event, I actually decided, okay, I'm going to write a book. And really, I can talk about how I wrote it, but the reason I wrote it was I just realized that, I have all these calls with people, high net worth people, doctors worth 5 million, or even people that didn't have a lot of money, but they're just like, how do I start? How do I get involved? I know I should be doing real estate. I know I should be doing this stuff, but like I own a rental house or I'm doing online trading. And it's just those are not passive investing strategies. They're not scalable. They take the more you get, the more time you spend. I mean, I tell people if you have 2 or 3 rental houses, if you were to 10x your strategy and have 20 or 30, could you do it without having another full-time job? And the answer for most people is, well, no way. And so the idea of like, this is a guide to learning about passive investing, why having a money person or Wall Street is not out to, I'm actually was a registered investment advisor, which is called an RIA. So now I still might call myself an RIA where I'm a recovering investment advisor. I'm like, don't do it.
Don't do it. Please don't.
Step back from the ledge. Don't give your money to Wall Street. But, there's just so many investments out there that are amazing investments people don't know about. And so I created a system or a tool in there of how do you analyze any deal. I call it like the deal flow, the deal funnel. And how do you actually put something through this funnel to realize, like, is this the market, the operator, and the deal I should work with? And it works with any asset. And so again, I mentioned a lot of things we've done, but it really gives people the tools to like walk away and say, okay, I think I know what I need to do to get started.
That's so good. Yeah, I think just having that commitment too. For you were at a Tony Robbins event and, basically you just drew the line in the sand and you're like, hey, enough is enough. This is what I'm going to do. And then you committed to it. You didn't just talk about it and say like, yeah, I want to do that. Like you actually followed through, which a lot of people have a hard time out there with actually taking action. It's easier said than done, and they don't think it through, thoroughly. And obviously, with your type of success and what you've been through in the past, obviously you're not that type of individual. You're an action taker. What are some contributes, do you think, that actually allow you versus the average person that may not actually, like, when they say they're going to do something, you do it while others may give up?
Well, I think it's interesting. As I've gotten older, this was a big shift for me, actually. It was a little personal, but when I was in my 30s, I'm 43 now, but I was, it was like 7-8 years ago, I went through a divorce and it was really hard. And I think for me, what it came from that is I realized I was getting older and I was approaching 40 and I was like, man, there's all these things I want to do with my life. Yeah. And I don't want to be the guy who's 70 or 80 years old and saying, you know what, I just wish I had tried. Like, what would have happened if I'd actually tried and I'd gone for it? Like, and I started to kind of realize, like, I had all these fears about what if I do this and I go into real estate and it fails or whatever. And then I kind of like, somebody kind of reframed it for me. Well, you go back to medical sales. And I was kind of like, oh, I could, like a lot of us, these things we think are really scary, or they're just like, oh my gosh, I've never do that. It's like, well, actually I could do it. It would be okay. But like, for some reason I had to kind of really play that out. But I think, I have this saying that, life has an action bias. That if you have all these great theories and you're way smarter than me, Brandon, you have all these things you're going to do. And yet I just like literally take the first step towards something. And I just do that every day and I reflect on how that's working and I keep going. I mean, it would just, the progress will be insane. So a lot of us, we want to have this incredible plan, everything all figured out, but really the person who just takes the action and then just kind of makes continual adjustments, they're always going to win. Because if you just are willing to try more things and just put yourself out there. So I think for me, it's just like, if you've ever seen the Rocky movies, you've seen Rocky and he's out there, he's getting the snot beat out of him every race, just like a pound or whatever, but he just keeps getting up and he keeps getting up and he always finds a way to win, right? So it's kind of like, if you just like want it bad enough and you're willing to do what it takes and you're willing to try and you're willing to end up with egg on your face sometimes or fail, and just, failing is not failure. It doesn't mean that it defines you. It's just there's lessons and there's learning. And so I'm sure in your business too, you've had things like that where you just continue to try a lot of different things. And you've realized like, oh my gosh, if I just keep doing this, I'm going to get where I want to go. And who knows where you're going to be in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. And same with me, I want to keep continually trying new things to grow.
Yeah. And I think as a business owner, entrepreneur, it's like, there's nothing easy about it, but there's nothing easy in life either. Or working for somebody else, but instead the good part is if you can take that, have that humility and be able to constantly keep getting back up, then down the road, you won't live with regret. You're not going to bed thinking like, well, what if I did this? Or why, didn't I ask this so talk to me. You were bringing a couple pieces just a moment ago of kind of like 10xing the business. Like, what would that look like and so forth? And funny enough, I'm reading the book right now, 10x is easier than 2x.
I love that book.
And,
so good.
Yeah, and it started to unlock some things for me, and so it was something kind of ironic, I guess, that you're bringing up. I'm curious. So many people overcomplicate this piece of it, and it's easier to think what are the the little things that need to get handled right now versus that big picture. What would it look like to 10x the business right now? Like how could you do that? It's probably less options, right? So for you, looking back in the past, what have been kind of those 10x moves for you? Like any pivotal points where the road cross came about?
Yeah, I think, like I talked about the initial decision of I'm going to do this, I'm going to figure this out, and just committing to do it. I started a meetup in Pasadena here in LA and approached somebody successful. A lot of my successes come through partnerships. So I approached a lady who had a successful meetup, had 50, 60 people come in once a month. I said, how about I start a meetup with you and I'll do all the work and you just show up? And she's like, that sounds like a great idea. So then we started this meetup, 60 people there, found my first investor who just approached me and like, I'd do one of your deals. Even though I wasn't an expert in the space, I was a leader because I was in the front of the room. And then about 6 months later, just kept kind of learning and trying to find new things and go to events. And I pitched a guy who was really well known in the multifamily real estate industry. And I just was like, how's it going for you raising money? He was actually helping teach others how to raise money, but he was having some trouble of his own, kind of building his own systems to kind of raise money internally. And so that ended up like a thing that he liked it and said, okay, let's talk about it. So for those next 18 months after that, I went from raising $100,000 for one deal to raising $15 million, having 1,000 one-on-one phone calls with high net worth investors while working my full-time job, right? So that was that was like a rocket ship moment where I was like, oh my gosh, and my net worth probably went up 10x. Just, it was crazy just how, it's really amazing how, being in the right place, asking the right questions. This is what I talk about my new book coming up, Rich Brain. I'll talk about it real quick. It's how the wealthy change their brain to change their bank account. So as I've talked to 2,500 investors, there's really three things that basically all revolve mindset. And so, the first one really is that a lot of us, we don't feel worthy of it. Sometimes somebody makes $100,000 a year, they're going to just always kind of figure out a way to make $100,000 a year. Somebody makes $1 million a year is going to figure out a way to do it. And it kind of comes down to like, Brené Brown is the author. She talks about this, that like the difference that separates people that are really successful or really wealthy or really whatever, and those that are not, is that the people that are feel worthy of it. And so I've created this idea of called wealth whisperings, where you just create with your words, just like I did, where I created things. Wealth whisperings are like wealth affirmations, but they're things that you're creating with your words. And as you begin to speak them, they basically put it out into the universe, but they also kind of teach yourself this is something you're worthy of. So it basically increases your worthiness. So that's one thing, is really creating that level of worthiness. Second thing, I'll just touch on these briefly and we can kind of go back. But the second one really is a never-ending learning. You look at any billionaire, typically a lot of these people read hours a day. Sometimes they'll read a ton. They'll be learning. And you have to look at learning as being like a part-time job, right? It's actually a vocation. You're actually learning. And the more, Warren Buffett says, if you learn to be able to earn. And so there's a direct correlation there. And the last one, which I think is really great, is, it's the idea you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If all the people around you are poor and overweight and, have no spiritual life, whatever, like if you're going to change any of those lives, you got to get around people that are at the next level. They got to be people that are 10x where you're at, and they will pull you up. So I think those are kind of the pillars of what it takes to go to the next level financially.
That is so good. Yeah. Dude, I'm stoked for your new book, and definitely want to get my hands on a copy for sure. Talk to me about the raising the capital part. You went from raising 100,000, which for anybody out there that's just getting started, that's awesome. But then getting to a point where, months later, actually raising, 15 million. What does that look like? How, tips and tricks of the sauce that you were able to put together in that moment.
Yeah, I think looking back, it's like, wow, 40 million, that's a lot of money. But I think the hardest part is getting started. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges for anybody who's starting to raise money, especially if it's different than your regular job. Like if your job is like you work in real estate, you're in the investment side, where people kind of like that makes sense. But if you're like me, you work in sales or you're doing something different, it's like the story doesn't make sense. If you go to your friends and family, like, hey, I'm doing this real estate thing and give me money. And you're like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like, how does that work? Whatever. It's almost like if you had a car mechanic and you went them for 10 years and you show up to have your car service and they start telling you about this real estate deal and they ask you to invest with them and you're like, wait, what? Fix my car, man. You're the car guy. Like you're like, so
what else are you selling here?
I know, exactly. Yeah. It's like, this just feels so left field. So we really, as humans, we respond to how we know people and how we reference them as experts in their space. So if you want to change the story of how people see you, what does your LinkedIn say? Sometimes like I had to actually go on and change my LinkedIn. You actually can block certain people so that bosses can't see it or something, but they see you in the industry. Maybe you're putting out an email, maybe you're putting out content. You start a podcast like this podcast that you're doing, you create things that really people find that are valuable. What it does is it changes the story of how people think of you, so that when you go and ask for money, it's like, oh, it makes sense. Brandon's been doing this for a long time. This is what's been his plan. And so then it's kind of like a progression of this. I've gotten value from this person. This is what it is. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is trying to change the story of how people see you. And you can do that by creating content or value around that and giving it to people for free.
Yeah, that's so good. When it comes down to that first raise of 15 million, what individuals were you sitting down in, like groups of people, or, how long did that take to actually get that capital together?
Yeah, so this was actually 3 different deals over an 18-month period. So it wasn't 15 million like at one time. This was spread out. So we were raising, I think the last one we raised $8 million in 24 hours. And it was just at the time we were raising, it had really scaled up. But what we did is we tried to create systems to be able to kind of get people teed up and ready for a deal. So when you think about it, the best time to raise money is not when you have a deal, it's months before. Sure. And how you do is you're having calls. So now when I have calls, like if somebody reaches out to us and says, hey, I'm interested in hearing about your unique deals, whatever, say, okay, yeah, let's have a call. And then I ask them a series of questions like, how'd you hear about us? What's your work background? What's your investing experience? I kind of figure out how sophisticated they are. And then I go in, what are your goals, cash flow, appreciation, whatever. Are you accredited, which means are you higher net worth, higher income or not? And then I go through and then I explain to them, this is what our group is, this is how we work, this is how we operate. This is how it works when we have a new deal. We typically have a webinar that's coming out. You want to sign up for it. And then you'll get the, if you can't make it live, you'll get the replay. And it's first come, first served. So if we don't have space, we don't have space. But that's kind of generally how we welcome people in new deals, so that they're kind of ready to go when we have a new deal. They're kind of waiting and they're able to jump in. So in the middle of it, it's just a constant thing. We're just constant, like every week, you now have 5 to 20 calls a week with different potential passive investors, and not everybody invests. It's about 20% that at some point will invest. But it's a way that I can kind of get people on our list and grow. And the more of those calls I have, the more people, when it's time, will invest.
Yeah, that's so good. I love it. So talk to me when it comes down to these different alternative type of investments, because you've kind of got your hand in a bunch of different things over the years. What's like really getting you excited today?
Yeah. There's a few things that I really get excited about right now. We've taken a little break from doing like real estate specific deals for a couple years, just because the rates have risen so sharply. And there's been this standoff between buyers and sellers where buyers are like, well, this was worth so much more later. Well, now buyers sometimes are in trouble and they have to sell. And so we've got deals we're getting sometimes at 30 to 40% discount of where they were a couple of years ago, which is kind of amazing if you think about how inflation is continuing to rage. And even though they say it's 3 or 4%, I think it's more like, 6 to 10%. So it's a unique time. I also love businesses. We're actually in the process of buying, smaller, mid-sized businesses that produce a lot of cash. Some of these sell for 3 to 10 times or 3 to 5 times profits. And so it's a great way, and you get financing for a lot of it. So there are some really unique options out there to get into certain types of businesses that really produce cash flow really well. So I like that. I'm also like a big precious metals guy. Precious metals don't like gold or physical gold or silver. And I like the physical version more than the ETF or the digital version. There's reasons for that I can share. But when you own metals, this is something that has a 5,000-year history of being money. People don't realize in the United States, up until the early 1900s, you could go in and slap your $20 bill down on the bank counter, and they would give you a 1-ounce gold coin, which is now about $2,400, right? And so it was actually it was a claim check. It was like the dollars actually said payable to the bearer and demand. The amount in gold. It actually set it on the bill. So what we have now, we don't have money when we're talking dollars. We actually have currency, right? So they can just keep creating more and more currency, but money was considered something that has intrinsic value. So that's where gold and silver does. It's also used for industrial purposes and different things. So I like having it not as an investment, but actually as a store of wealth. So instead of holding cash, I like holding money in that. So I like that. I've also found another real estate thing is debt funds these days. I'm getting into kind of some sort of first position debt fund, which often is 50 to 60% loan to value, very safe and conservative. You have U.S. treasuries and bonds and money markets are very safe. This is also kind of not quite that, but very, very safe. And a lot of these deals are paying sometimes 13, 14, 15% annualized and paying out monthly. So you're getting like the low risk of debt, of like a very safe debt, and it's paying out like equity. It's really quite incredible for some of these. So really enjoying it.
I love it. Talk to me about buying cash flowing businesses that are already established. There's opportunities out there from banks or SBA perhaps where you can get a majority of the funding that you don't even really need to come to the table too much with, your syndication or your own fund, correct?
Yeah. So we've been looking at different options of buying businesses. There's different brokers that offer businesses. There's we like e-commerce businesses as well because they're a little more remote and you can do unique things with them. SBA, so the Small Business Administration, the loans can be attractive. The challenge for someone like myself, or maybe for you, if you have other assets, SBA typically requires a personal guarantee. So if you buy a business and it goes south, you could be putting all your other stuff at risk or other stuff you own even personally. So there are once you get above a certain size, there's much more bank or private equity lending for stuff like that. But I think it's a great idea. I mean, right now, one of the challenges we found in real estate, it's hard to find cash flow. It's hard to find things that make sense unless you buy it at a screaming deal and you can flip and you can do things, but that's not necessarily cash flow, right? Cash flow is ongoing, like getting paid every month, every quarter, things like that. So the debt funds do that. Obviously, that will do that. But a lot of just buying real estate, it's hard to find cash flow. And so businesses provide that, right? I mean, some of these businesses, if you buy we looked at a business recently that was selling for 3 times profit. And I mean, it's crazy. You look at how much it's like buying something at a 36 cap rate or so 35 cap rate. It's insane, right? So, so it's just finding things that cash flow. And obviously, if you're going to buy a business as an investor, that's not necessarily a passive route. That's a very active route. But with partners or investing passively, or there are groups like us that do this, that people can join as a passive investor, and then you bet the team in the deal and then get into it.
I love that. When it comes down to getting these leads to some of these other alternative type of investments outside of real estate, are you still going through brokers, or like what does that look like to get these type of leads coming in? Obviously, there's no in team, so I'm sure that you have several other people that are scouting and kind of getting the word out there to get more leads coming your guys' way. But I'm just curious, are you guys typically going through a broker? Where's your biggest lead source coming from?
Yeah. So, my goal, honestly, Brandon, is to own everything and operate nothing. So that's kind of my stuff. I want to be the guy who's educating people. And then what it does is when they join our platform or join our investing group, they get access to things like oil and gas that can reduce tax, and even on an ordinary income, potentially. They can get access to real estate or self-storage, multifamily. They can get access to other types of deals. So the biggest thing for me is finding partners, one, that I trust, 2, that have similar values, and 3, that have a great track record, right? So it takes a while. We have a new multifamily partner we're working with that a friend of mine had done 47 deals with them, like 47. And I asked if there had been any issues. He said, well, one time they were late on a tax form, but there was a really good reason for it because of this other thing, whatever. I was like, well, that's pretty good. Pretty good. They've had no capital calls, no other issues. So it's like, okay, that's a pretty good partner to get involved with. So I started doing some digging and looking into it. I was like, yeah, this looks really good. So I think it's, it comes down, you're never going to be perfect at finding the right partners, but I think over time, as you develop your network, the deal flow can increase because people just send me stuff. They call me about things, especially now that I can raise money. People will, somebody will listen to your podcast, but hey, I've got this thing and whatever, and I'll have to vet them and try to. It's a little challenging. Sometimes I move pretty slow sometimes into partnerships unless I have like a really good somebody who I know well who really knows them and maybe has invested with them or things like that. And so, but I think in general, so we don't, I'm not directly calling brokers. We have our partner had something on the East Coast recently that, had 200 different deals presented. They'll, do underwriting on all of them, and they'll, make offers on, a significant portion of them, and then get, 10 back and forth on it. Maybe 1 or 2 deals actually close. Right. So it's a lot of work. So it's nice having partners that are really committed to that level of diligence and going for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That makes so much sense. So when it comes down to the team currently, what does that look like?
Yeah, so the team right now, I have a few in-house people that work for me. I've got a couple part-time. I've got, a couple full-time, 1 part-time. And then we've got, as far as team, it kind of depends on the asset, right? So we're partnered with the 4th largest operator of ATM machines in the country. So their whole team there. I've got, some different multifamily partners that, I'm a part of the asset management team, but I'm not the one who found the deal. I'm not the one who's the primary asset manager. So it just depends. It kind of depends on which asset we're talking about. The debt fund, we're partnered with a lender that's a 20-year lender that has a great track record in the space. So, we just try to find partners that we really like and are very established. So the amazing thing about as you scale up, it doesn't have to be all in-house. Like I said, we've got a couple full-time employees in-house. We've got 1 part-time. And then we've got kind of teams of people or groups that kind of help with different things. But I've realized, again, if I can just be on the side of really helping people to get to the right type of investment, it can be really powerful for them.
Yeah, that's so good. When did you start your first fund or syndication?
I first started doing it was, it was fall of 2018. So
Okay. Have you exited any of the projects yet?
We've had a few exits. Yeah, we've done well on the exits we've had. We have a couple deals that have really struggled with having bridge debt. So I had a partner who did a lot of bridge debt stuff. And so we haven't had any losses. We might have a loss on one or two of them. And so that's something that we're looking at. So we've kind of changed how we approach going to other things. But yeah, so we've had, and it just depends on what the investment is. Some of the alternative stuffs, it's, outside of real estate, it's just been the last, 2-3 years, but we've got, partners that have just incredible, track records.
Love it. That's so cool. What do you think is the biggest obstacle that you've seen in the last 6+ years for your entrepreneur journey?
The biggest obstacle? That's a great question. I mean, I would say, the biggest thing is mindset. And I think it comes back to what we're talking about, rich brain. It's just the idea of almost it comes up internally, that imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to think I can do this? Or even just the who do you think you are kind of thing. And sometimes once in a while it comes from a person, but a lot of it's just internal. But I think it's just continuing to create the bigger and better things that further than I'm at now. And Ben Hardy talks a lot about this, the idea of he has a new book called Rapid Transformation that's getting ready to come out. And he talks about when you have these big lofty goals, you become a different person. Right, Jim Rohn talks about that too, the personal development guy. It's not that whether you achieve the goals or not. I make 10 pretty audacious goals every year, and I usually meet about half of them. Yeah. I make progress on almost all of them, but I become a different person. So people look at me sometimes like, well, how do you do all this? How do you whatever? Well, I continue to create by visualizing, and then I read the goals every day. But I think that's the biggest challenge. Is sometimes something bad will happen, and you go through a challenging season, or something doesn't work the way it's supposed to, or a deal goes bad or something, and it's really hard. It's really hard. But then you have to just come back and say, well, what am I here to do? What's my purpose here? I feel like God put me here for a reason. So what am I here to do? And it's okay, I've got something I'm here to do, and this is what it is, and I've got to go 110%.
Yeah, I can't stress enough to all the listeners, mindset is everything, and we're all conditioned from how we were raised, good, bad, indifferent, or whatever. But we're all kind of seeded in to a certain way of thinking, and it's not necessarily parents or family or anybody their fault, but it is what it is. Whether you took it wrong ways or whatever it may be, but there are certain things that you believe to be true about money, about relationships, about wealth, about whether you deserve these things. And so it's really important to work on that mindset to get into a better kind of victorious position mentally, physically, emotionally, so that you can be the best in your space and not have any anchors kind of holding you back. God-given gifts that we all have. There's so many amazing things that, finding purpose to really be able to take your thing, that God-given gift to the next level. It's so crucial, and it's so important to find. And that mindset, it's something every single person has to go on their journey to find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the world needs what we have, right? The world needs what you have to offer, Brandon. The world needs what our listeners, every single person has something to contribute. It may be some big, huge platform thing, or it could be hey, I'm a great neighbor. I'm a great son. I'm a great parent. Gosh, those are irreplaceable, especially being a parent. Talk about family or people in your life. I want to show up in a way that really impacts people, because there's no, I just think, like you said, there's divine purpose. We're all here for a reason. So if that's the case, then we've got to live out what we're here to do. And if not, we're gonna. I think it's no mystery that so many people are depressed and just kind of going through life and trying to there's a book called Dopamine Nation, and it's the idea we're just constantly addicted to things like social media and porn and drugs or alcohol, because we're just trying to find something to fill all this. But what really fills you up is when you get a hold of your purpose. It just absolutely changes your life, and you can't. It's like a fire. You're fired up every day because you're going. Doesn't matter how much you work. You're just I'm going to do this because I'm here to do this. And this is going to freaking change the world.
Yep. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I love it. So Bronson, talk to me. What does the future look like for you? What's next in the pipeline? What are you working on? What are you excited about?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I'm excited about the book. I'm excited to get some deals I'm really excited about that are right around the corner, really unique stuff that, we have people we can't really share publicly, but I'm just excited about those. I'm excited to continue to grow. I'm excited to continue to learn. I think life has a way, there's this phenomenon as we get older, things kind of speed up a little bit. And so I think just getting a hold of the things that, I'm really here to do and just really, enjoy and go for it. So I travel a ton. I traveled 6 times internationally last year. Went to Nepal and India a couple months ago for base camp and the Taj Mahal and stuff. It's just fun. So I love creating experiences and adventures as well. Those things I'm pretty fired up for.
I love it, man. I know you already talked about the book a little bit, but Rich Brain, talk to me about it. When is that coming out? When can we anticipate it? And what should we know about it that you haven't told us yet?
Yeah, so I've talked about it a little bit. So this is the book. Super excited about it. It's just I'm in the process of writing it. I think, it should be out in the fall. So I'm working on, the goal is to basically September, October, hopefully be able to get it done. But I'm really excited. And if somebody hasn't checked out my other book, Fire Yourself, it's a great place to start. So you can kind of get on my list and hear about kind of what's happening there. But yeah, I'm really excited. Again, it's I think the thing that I'm most excited from the book, about the book from, and the thing that's most surprising is that these are all very learnable, achievable things that almost everybody can do. And it really starts with a belief about changing the belief about who you are, that you're worthy of it. And so it's going to talk a lot about how do you feel worthy, or maybe somebody said something or did something that made you feel unworthy, that you weren't able to do. And it's just stuff that it doesn't seem like it's connected to wealth, but I think it absolutely is. And so this is going to kind of touch a different side of things than any wealth book that I've read is about, and try to make it not woo-woo, but more just, hey, this is exactly what science says, and this is how you actually change this,
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. It's exciting, man. So talk to me, how can the listeners get to connect with you more?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, Bronson Equity. I've also got a free gift. I think inflation's, like I mentioned, substantially higher than what they say it is.
Yeah.
So if you want, I wrote a 40-page guide called How to Use Inflation to Your Advantage. I get into some alternative strategies like using debt or other sorts of things to be able to really use inflation to your advantage. You can text the word inflation to 33777. And so you can get that free guide by texting 33777, the word inflation. So that's a good way to connect.
Awesome. And then you just gave a ton of your time for me, the listeners. Anything that we could do to give back to you?
Yeah, thanks, man. I think supporting the book would be great. It's on Amazon, Fire Yourself. We also have a podcast called The Mailbox Money Show, which we talk about all different types of alternative investing. I'd love to actually have you on there as well and talk about the ways that you fund real estate and some stuff about your business. Would love to do that. And so, yeah, I just love connecting on all the social medias, but any way I can help, whether passive investors, we have our investor list, or just even some of the stuff we're doing on social media, would love to connect with anybody.
Love it. Yeah, guys, you're definitely going to want to reach out to Bronson and check out the different ways that he is putting his money to work so that you can get some alternative investment opportunities as well and beat inflation, because the government is crushing us right now with certain things. And so it's really important to get a hold of that yourself, right? When it's meant to be, it's up to me type of thing. Really take that approach to heart. With that being said, if you want to get a hold of me, you can always do so on Instagram. It's Brandon Elliott Investments. Otherwise, check out our Instagram page for Credit Counsel Elite. Make sure you follow us there. Get all the new tips, tricks, all the fun stuff that we're dishing out there for content each and every day. And then if you haven't already checked out our website and sat down with either myself or our team to go over how we can show you as a business owner nationwide how to get 2, 3, 4, or even 500,000 in the next 30 to 90 days with interest rates as low as 0% interest. What are you waiting for? Check out creditcounselelite.com right now. That's www.creditcounselelite.com. There's a quick 10-minute video explains more, so you understand what the heck I'm talking about. Afterwards, you can schedule a call with either myself or one of our team members to go over your particular situation and where you're trying to go. With that being said, if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, said Ready, Set, Go, REI Podcast, do that right now. What are you waiting for? Make sure that happens so you get the newest notification every Monday, and then we will catch you on the next episode. Till next time, guys, God bless. Appreciate you, Bronson. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks.
This has been another episode of Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, brought to you by Brandon Elliott. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining. Until next time, God bless.